The first time I saw him, I wanted to vanish. Not because he was intimidating, though he absolutely was, but because he was holding my words. Words I had written in the darkest hours of the night, never expecting they'd reach the person who now sat across from me. His lips moving as he read them aloud. Sometimes I wonder if anyone in this world really sees me. Caleb's voice carried through the quiet hum of the cafe, smooth yet weighted with something that felt too raw. You wrote this months ago, didn't you? And just like that, I was caught. Ethan Granton, the guy who never spoke up in college lectures, the one who avoided eye contact at crowded parties, the one who believed that being invisible was safer than being known, had been the anonymous sender of those late-night emails. And now, sitting across from me, Caleb Hayes, the golden boy I'd both admired and envied from afar, was unraveling my secrets line by line. How did we get here? That's the part that still feels like a cruel joke from the universe. It started as a mistake. An email drafted but never meant to be sent. A rant about feeling unseen, feeling like I was screaming into a void. Somehow, by a twist of fate or maybe fate itself, that email found its way into Caleb's inbox. And instead of deleting it, instead of mocking it, he replied. Back then, I never signed my name. I didn't dare. I became a ghost writer of my own heartbreak, confessing fears, dreams, and things I had never dared to say aloud. He never pressed for details, never demanded my identity. He just answered, with patience, with empathy, with words that soothed the gnawing loneliness I carried like a second skin. But all secrets, no matter how carefully guarded, eventually demand to be uncovered. And so here we were, two boys in a cafe, one reading confessions, the other silently coming undone. Caleb leaned back in his chair, eyes never leaving me. His gaze was steady, too steady, and my chest tightened under its weight. You know what's funny? He asked, lips corking into something between a smile and a smirk. I thought whoever was writing these was older, maybe some philosophy major trying too hard to be deep. I didn't expect. He gestured toward me with a lazy wave of his hand. You! I flushed, heat crawling up my neck. I didn't expect you to ever read them out loud, I muttered, gripping my coffee like it might save me from drowning. Why me? Caleb asked suddenly. His tone wasn't accusing, it was curious, almost gentle, but the question sliced through me all the same. Why him? Out of all the strangers in New York City, why had my words chosen him? Because he was everything I wasn't. Visible, bright, magnetic. People leaned toward him without him even trying. He walked into a room and it was like gravity shifted. And me? I was the shadow in the corner, the background noise. Maybe some part of me believed that if I wrote to him, even anonymously, his light would somehow spill into the cracks of my world. But I couldn't say that. Not yet. I didn't choose you, I lied softly. It was an accident. Caleb tilted his head, studying me. An accident that lasted 6 months? Silence. My pulse hammered so loudly I was sure he could hear it. That was Caleb's gift. I realized, not just his easy charm, not just his smile that could disarm the coldest heart. His real gift was the way he saw people. He looked at you like there was more than skin, more than posture, more than words. And I hated him for it almost as much as I needed it. Do you regret it? He asked. I blinked. What? Sending them. Telling me all of this. His voice softened. Trusting me with things you couldn't tell anyone else. The truth caught in my throat. Did I regret it? Maybe. Because sitting here now, stripped of my anonymity, I felt naked in a way I hadn't anticipated. But also, no, because those nights of waiting for his replies, of knowing someone out there was listening, it had kept me alive. I don't regret it, I whispered finally. But I didn't think you'd ever connect the dots. Caleb's smile was slow, almost rueful. You think I wouldn't recognize your words? Ethan, the way you write, you could light a match in someone's chest. You could burn them alive if you wanted to. I couldn't forget your voice if I tried. My breath hitched, and suddenly the cafe felt too small, too bright, too exposed. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. We were supposed to stay strangers. That had been the deal. Anonymous sender, anonymous receiver. No faces. No names. Just words. But the universe, it seemed, had other plans. And now, sitting here across from him, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't just about anonymous emails anymore. This was about me, him. And the fact that my heart, despite everything, was already leaning across the table, reaching for his. Caleb's words hung in the air like a live wire, sparking between us. I couldn't forget your voice if I tried. I wanted to laugh, but it would have come out jagged, maybe even bitter. My voice? I wasn't sure I had one, not the way he made it sound. I was the quiet kid in the back row, the one professors forgot to call on, the one who let other people's noise drown him out. If my voice mattered, it was only in those midnight emails, hidden behind the safety of a glowing screen. And yet, he was looking at me like I had been loud all along. I broke eye contact first, my gaze sliding toward the window where rain had begun to streak the glass, blurring the streetlights outside. You make it sound like I'm someone worth remembering, I said quietly. Caleb leaned forward, elbows on the table, his tone firm. You are. The conviction in his voice made my chest ache. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't comfortable, not yet, but it wasn't unbearable either. It was fragile, like a thread strung too tight, threatening to snap if either of us moved the wrong way. Finally, Caleb set the stack of printed emails down on the table, tapping the edges into neat alignment. I didn't bring you here to embarrass you, Ethan. I just needed to see you, to know who you were. My stomach twisted. And now that you do? His lips curved, but it wasn't quite a smile. Now I want to understand why. Why me? Why you trusted me with all this? I swallowed hard, my throat dry. I told you it was an accident at first. Sure, he said, nodding slowly. But after the first time? After the second? After 6 months? His gaze locked onto mine, sharp but not unkind. That wasn't an accident anymore. That was a choice. My chest tightened. He was right, of course. Every email after that first one had been deliberate. Every word I sent was a piece of myself I'd chosen to give him, even knowing he might never return anything but polite replies. And he hadn't just been polite. He'd been kind, thoughtful. Too much for someone like me to hold without breaking. I don't know, I admitted. Maybe I needed you to know me without seeing me. Caleb tilted his head, studying me. And now that I see you? I didn't have an answer. The rain thickened outside, pattering against the windows like the city itself was eavesdropping on us. Caleb glanced at his watch, then back at me. Do you want to take a walk? The question startled me. In the rain. He shrugged, that infuriating smirk tugging at his mouth. It's only water. Against my better judgment, I agreed. Maybe because sitting across from him in that cafe felt like drowning, and I needed air even if it was rain-soaked. We stepped outside, the chill immediately biting through my jacket. The street was slick with reflections of neon and headlights, the kind of cinematic beauty you never really appreciate when you're alone. Caleb shoved his hands into his pockets, walking close enough that our shoulders brushed now and then. Each touch sent a small jolt through me, like static electricity sparking against my skin. Do you ever regret it? He asked suddenly, his voice softer now, almost swallowed by the rain. Regret what? Not saying these things out loud sooner. To someone. Anyone. I hesitated, watching the steam rise from the sewer grates. Sometimes, but it was easier in words. No one could see me flinch if they rejected me. No one could laugh. Caleb stopped walking. I froze when he turned toward me, his blue eyes catching the glow of the street lamp above us. Do I look like I'm laughing? My breath hitched. No. Then maybe you should start believing that people can actually listen without tearing you apart. Something in his tone broke me open a little, like he wasn't just talking about me anymore. Like he knew what it was to hide, too. We started walking again, slower this time, our steps sinking without effort. The city around us blurred, voices and horns and footsteps fading until it felt like we were the only two people alive. By the time we reached Central Park, the rain had softened to a drizzle, leaving the pathways glistening. The trees arched above us, dripping, their leaves whispering in the damp night air. Caleb shoved his hood back, letting the water bead in his blonde hair, and grinned at me like a boy ditching class. "You ever think about how insane this is?" he asked. "What do you mean?" "You, me, this." He gestured vaguely between us. "A few weeks ago, you were just an anonymous name in my inbox. Now I'm walking through the park with you in the rain. If someone told me this would happen, I'd have laughed." I ducked my head, smiling despite myself. "You probably should laugh. It's ridiculous." "Yeah," he said, bumping his shoulder lightly against mine. "Ridiculously good." The warmth of his words spread through me faster than the chill could seep in. I wanted to believe him, wanted to lean into the possibility that this wasn't some cruel joke, but a beginning. But beginnings were dangerous. We found a bench under a street lamp and sat, the silence stretching between us again, this time less fragile and more waiting. Caleb leaned back, arms draped along the backrest, looking maddeningly at ease. I sat stiffly, my hands jammed into my pockets, my whole body a knot of nerves. Finally, he spoke. "I'm glad it was you." The words were so simple, so unguarded, that I turned to him in surprise. "What?" "The emails," he said, meeting my eyes. "I'm glad it was you. Anyone else, I don't know if I would have cared as much. But your words, they mattered. They still do." Something lodged in my throat, too heavy to swallow. I wanted to tell him that his replies had saved me on nights when the silence felt unbearable, that his kindness had been a lifeline I clung to when everything else felt hollow. But the words tangled inside me, stuck between fear and hope. So instead, I whispered the only thing I could manage. "I'm glad it was you too." Caleb's lips curved into a real smile this time, soft and unguarded, and the sight of it made my chest ache in a way that felt almost like healing. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel invisible. That night marked the beginning of something neither of us could fully name yet. A fragile thread, yes, but one that shimmered with possibility. And as the rain tapered off and the city breathed around us, I realized with quiet certainty this was no longer just about emails. This was about stepping out of the shadows, about being seen, about us. The city didn't sleep, but my body begged for it. After hours of walking in the rain with Caleb off talking, of not talking, we ended up at his apartment. I didn't know how it happened. One moment we were standing outside the gates of Central Park, and the next he was asking, "Want to come up?" Like it was the most casual thing in the world. I should have said no. Every warning bell in my head screamed against it. But my mouth betrayed me. "Yeah, okay." Now, sitting in his living room, everything felt both surreal and terrifying. The space was warm, comfortable, a mix of modern lines and lived-in chaos books stacked haphazardly, a blanket thrown over the back of the couch, a record player humming softly in the corner. It was so him-bright, careless, magnetic. And I was so meekward, guarded, trying not to spill the truth that had been clawing at my throat since the cafe. Caleb handed me a mug of hot chocolate, his fingers brushing mine. "You look like you're about to bolt." I let out a humorless laugh. "Maybe I should." "Why?" He settled on the floor beside me, close enough that the heat of his body bled into mine. "Because this doesn't make sense," I admitted, my voice raw. "You and me. This whole thing." Caleb tilted his head, his eyes catching mine. "It doesn't have to make sense to be real." His confidence, the ease with which he spoke it, was infuriating. How could he sit there so calm while I felt like the ground beneath me was cracking open? I stared down at the steam curling from my mug. "What if I disappoint you? What if the person you thought was writing those emails isn't the same as the one sitting here now?" Caleb leaned closer, his shoulder brushing mine. "Then I'd say you don't give yourself enough credit." The words settled over me like a blanket I didn't know I needed. Still, doubt gnawed at the edges. We talked for hours about nothing and everything. He told me about his childhood in Boston, about the way he used to sneak out to play guitar on the stoop when his parents fought. I told him about my sister, about the nights I stayed awake listening to the silence and wondering if I'd ever matter to anyone. The more we shared, the more I felt something shifting. Like the emails had been only the surface, and now we were digging into the soil beneath. At one point, Caleb stretched out his legs and sighed. You know, I used to imagine who you were. Oh, my voice cracked slightly. Yeah. He smiled faintly. Sometimes I pictured some old writer with glasses and too many cats. Other times, I thought maybe you were someone I passed on the street, someone I'd never notice until I did. Turns out, I wasn't that far off. I laughed softly despite myself. You make me sound invisible. His smile faded into something gentler. Not invisible, just hidden. There's a difference. The room went quiet again, but it wasn't heavy. It was full of unsaid things, of possibilities hanging in the air like unpopped bubbles. And then, without warning, Caleb's hand shifted, his fingers brushing against mine on the floor. Not grabbing, not demanding, just there. Every nerve in my body lit up. I didn't move, couldn't. Finally, I whispered, "Why are you doing this?" His voice was steady. "Because I want to." Later, when the clock crept past midnight, I stood at his door, fumbling with my jacket. I should go. Caleb leaned against the frame, studying me with that unervingly steady gaze. Will you come back? The question stunned me. You want me to? I wouldn't have asked otherwise. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to nod. Okay, I'll come back. His smile was small but real. Good. Then this isn't over. As I stepped into the hallway, my heart pounded with something dangerously close to hope. The days that followed blurred into a rhythm I hadn't known I needed. Classes, work, the noise of the city, all of it felt different now, anchored by the quiet knowledge that Caleb was there, waiting on the other end of a text, or a coffee shop table, or his apartment door. We didn't call it anything. We didn't need to. Whatever it was ours. But with closeness came cracks. And cracks had a way of widening. One evening, about a week later, we were walking through Washington Square Park when Caleb asked, out of nowhere, "Why did you stop writing?" The question hit like a sucker punch. I shoved my hands into my pockets, staring at the fountain lit up in the distance. I didn't stop. You found me. That's not the same, he said gently. You used to pour yourself into those emails. Every fear, every dream, every piece of yourself you were too scared to show anyone else, you gave it to me. But now, his voice trailed off. I clenched my jaw. Now what? Now you're holding back. His words stung mostly because they were true. In writing, I had been fearless. In person, every word felt like walking a tightrope over a chasm. One wrong step and I'd lose everything. I'm trying, I said finally. It's not easy. I don't need perfect, Caleb said softly. I just need you. The ache in my chest nearly doubled me over. He made it sound so simple, but simple was terrifying. That night, lying awake in my tiny apartment, I stared at the ceiling and thought about his words. I just need you. The truth was, I wasn't sure I knew who me even was. But maybe with him I could find out. The next time I saw Caleb, I brought something with me. A printed copy of one of the emails I had never sent. It was the rawest one. The one I had written on a night when loneliness felt like it might swallow me whole. When I handed it to him, my hands shook. This was supposed to be the last one, I admitted. The one I never sent. Caleb unfolded the paper carefully, his eyes scanning the words. His expression softened, his jaw tightening in places, his breath catching in others. When he finished, he looked at Miralai, looked at me and said, "Thank you for trusting me with this." Something inside me cracked open, and for the first time in a long time, I let it. Caleb folded the unsent email back into thirds and set it carefully on the table between us. His eyes searched mine with a gentleness that almost hurt. You weren't planning to send this, he said softly. I shook my head. No, I wrote it on a night when I thought maybe I didn't matter enough to take up space. I thought sending it would have been a burden. Caleb leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and his voice was steady, deliberate. Ethan, you are never a burden. Do you hear me? The way he said it, certainty, The quiet fire burned straight through the walls I'd spent years building. For a moment, all I could do was stare at him, my throat tight, my chest rising and falling like I just run a marathon. "I don't know how to do this," I admitted. My voice cracked, but I didn't care. "I don't know how to be seen." "Not really." Caleb reached across the table, his fingers brushing the back of my hand. "Then let me help. You don't have to figure it out alone." Something inside me shifted then. Not a loud, cinematic moment, but a quiet, seismic one. Like tectonic plates moving beneath the surface, rearranging the foundation of who I thought I was. For the first time, I let myself believe him. But belief wasn't enough to erase fear. A week later, I found myself pulling back. It wasn't intentional at first. Missed calls, delayed texts, excuses about being busy with work. But beneath it all was the gnawing thought. What if I lose him? If Caleb was the sun, then maybe I was only ever meant to orbit, never meant to stand in the light. One night, when the weight became too much, I sent him a message. "I need space." He didn't respond immediately. Hours stretched into a day into two. The silence felt worse than anything I'd ever imagined. By the third day, I couldn't take it anymore. I went to his apartment, heart in my throat, rehearsing apologies that sounded hollow even in my own head. When he opened the door, his expression was guarded. Not angry, never angry, but hurt. And somehow that was worse. "You wanted space," he said simply. "I thought I did," I admitted. "But the truth is, I was scared." His gaze softened, though the tension in his shoulders remained. "Scared of what?" "Of you seeing too much. Of you realizing I'm not worth all the things you've given me. That I'll disappoint you." Caleb sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Ethan, you keep talking like you're some fragile thing I'll drop if I hold you too tightly. But don't you get it? I'm not going anywhere. Not unless you push me away." The words hit hard, knocking the air from my lungs. "I don't want to push you away," I whispered. "Then stop trying." Silence stretched between us, heavy but not unfixable. I stepped forward, my hands shaking as I reached for him. For once, I didn't hide the tremor in my voice. "Stay, please." Caleb's arms wrapped around me instantly, pulling me against him. His chin rested on my hair, and I felt his steady heartbeat against my chest. "I already told you," he murmured. "I'm not leaving." And for the first time, I let myself believe it. The weeks that followed weren't perfect. There were still moments when I flinched, when the old instincts whispered that love wasn't meant for people like me. But Caleb met me every step of the way with patience, with humor, with a stubborn kind of love that didn't demand perfection, only presence. Slowly, I began to trust it. One night, standing on the Brooklyn Bridge as dawn broke over the skyline, Caleb pulled a folded piece of paper from his jacket pocket. My heart skipped when I recognized the very first email I had ever sent. He unfolded it, the paper worn soft from being read too many times. "Sometimes I wonder if anyone in this world really sees me," he read aloud, his voice carrying in the early morning quiet. Tears stung my eyes. "Why do you still have that?" "Because it reminds me," he said, turning to face me fully, "of how far you've come, of how far we've come." The bridge was nearly empty, the city just beginning to stir. Wind whipped through his hair, catching the edges of his words, but nothing could scatter their weight. "Ethan," he said, and my name in his voice felt like an anchor and a promise all at once. "I saw you then, I see you now, and I want you to know I'll keep seeing you, for as long as you'll let me." My vision blurred, but I didn't care. I stepped closer, my hands trembling as they found his. "I don't know if I know how to love the right way," I admitted. He cupped my face gently, thumbs brushing the wetness at the corners of my eyes. "There's no right way. There's just our way." And then, beneath the rising sun, with the city spread out behind us and the world waking around us, Caleb kissed me. It wasn't the kind of kiss that lit fireworks or shattered silence. It was quieter, deep-era kiss that said you're not alone anymore. When we finally pulled apart, breathless and unsteady, I knew the truth I'd been running from all along. I wasn't invisible. Not anymore. And maybe, just maybe, I never had been. Months later, sitting together in that same cafe where it all began, Caleb flipped through the stack of emails one last time. His smile was soft, private, like a secret he no longer had to keep. You know, he said, nudging me playfully, someday, you're going to have to admit you're a writer. I laughed, shaking my head. Someday. Maybe. But for now it was enough. Enough that he saw me. Enough that he stayed. Enough that, against all odds, two boys who should have been strangers had found each other in the vast, lonely city. And in the quiet that followed, I let myself lean into him, into us, into the fragile, beautiful certainty that this was only the beginning. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.